Hey guys, it's Jasper. This is the second part to a reading of George MacDonald's fairy tale, Cross Purposes. As I said in the first video, tonight I am drinking some Macallan's Scotch, something from the Highlands, feeling appropriate as it is a Scottish fairy tale, and our MacDonald is a Highland-born man. Hope you guys enjoy. Richard, which is name enough for a fairy story, was the son of a widow in Alice's village. He was so poor that he did not find himself generally welcome, so he hardly went anywhere, but read books at home and waited upon his mother. His manners, therefore, were shy and sufficiently awkward to give an unfavorable impression to those who looked at outsides. Alice would have despised him, but he never came near enough for that. Now Richard had been saving up his few pence in order to buy an umbrella for his mother, for the winter would come, and the one she had was almost torn to ribbons. One bright summer evening, when he thought umbrellas must be cheap, he was walking across the marketplace to buy one. There, in the middle of it, stood an odd-looking little man actually selling umbrellas. Here was a chance for him. When he drew near, he found that the little man, while vaunting his umbrellas to the skies, was asking such absurdly small prices for him that no one would venture to buy one. He opened and laid them all out full stretch on the marketplace, about 25 of them, stick downwards like little tents, and he stood beside, haranguing the people. But he would not allow one of the crowd to touch his umbrellas. As soon as his eye fell upon Richard, he changed his tone and said, "Well, as nobody seems inclined to buy, I think, my dear umbrellas, we had better be going home." Whereupon the umbrellas got up with some difficulty and began hobbling away. People stared at each other with open mouths, for they saw that what they had taken for a lot of umbrellas was in reality a flock of black geese. A great turkey cock went gobbling behind them, driving them all down the lane toward the forest. Richard thought with himself, "There's more in this than I can account for. But an umbrella that could lay eggs would be a very jolly umbrella." So by the time the people were beginning to laugh at each other, Richard was halfway down the lane at the heels of the geese. There he stopped and caught one of them, but instead of a goose, he had a huge hedgehog in his hands, which he dropped in dismay. Whereupon it waddled away, a goose as before, and the whole of them began cackling and hissing in a way he could not mistake. For the turkey cock he gobbled and gabbled and choked himself and got right again in the most ridiculous manner. In fact, he seemed sometimes to forget he was a turkey, and laughed like a fool. All at once, with a simultaneous long-necked hiss, they flew into the wood, and the turkey after them. But Richard soon got up with them again and found them all hanging by their feet from the trees, in 2 rows, one on each side of the path, while the turkey was walking on. Him Richard followed. But the moment he reached the middle of the suspended geese, from every side arose the most frightful hisses, and their necks grew longer and longer, till there were nearly 30 broad bills close to his head, blowing in his face, in his ears, and at the back of his neck. But the turkey, looking round and seeing what was going on, turned and walked back. When he reached the place, he looked up at the first and gobbled at him in the wildest manner. That goose grew silent and dropped from the tree. Then he went to the next, and so on, till he had gobbled them all off the trees, one after another. But when Richard expected to see them go after the turkey, there was nothing but a flock of huge mushrooms and puffballs. "I have had enough of this," thought Richard. "I will go home again." "Go home, Richard," said a voice close to him. Looking down, he saw, instead of the turkey, the most comical-looking man he had ever seen. "Go home, Master Richard," repeated he, grinning. "Not for your bidding," answered Richard. "Come on, then, Master Richard." "Not that either, without a good reason." "I will give you such an umbrella for your mother." "I don't take presents from strangers." "Oh, bless you, I'm no stranger here. Oh, no, not at all." And he set off in the manner usual with him, rolling every way at once. Richard could not help laughing and following. At length, Toadstool plumped in a great hole full of water. Served him right, thought Richard. "Served him right," bawled the goblin, crawling out again and shaking the water from him like a spaniel. "This is the very place I wanted, only I rolled too fast." However, he went on rolling again faster than before, though it was now uphill till he came to the top of a considerable height on which grew a number of palm trees. "Have you a knife, Richard?" said the goblin, stopping all at once, as if he had been walking quietly along, just like other people. Richard pulled out a pocket knife and gave it to the creature, who instantly cut a deep gash in one of the trees. Then he bounded to another and did the same, and so on until he had gnashed all of them. Richard followed him, saw that the little stream, clearer than the clearest water, began to flow from each, increasing in size the longer it flowed. Before he had reached the last, there was quite a tinkling and rustling of the thistle rills that ran down the stems of the palms. This grew and grew till Richard saw a full rivulet was flowing down the side of the hill. "Here is your knife, Richard," said the goblin. By the time he had put it in his pocket, the rivulet had grown to a small torrent. "Now, Richard, come along," said Toadstool, and threw himself into the torrent. "I'd rather have a boat," returned Richard. "Oh, you stupid!" cried Toadstool, crawling up the side of the hill, down which the stream had already carried him some distance, with every contortion and labor and difficulty he could suggest. Yet with incredible rapidity he crawled to the very top of one of the trees, and tore down a huge leaf, which he threw on the ground, and himself after it, rebounding like a ball. He then laid the leaf on the water, held it by the stem, and told Richard to get upon it. He did so. It went down the stream like an arrow. This began the strangest and most delightful voyage. The stream rushed careering and curveting down the hillside, bright as a diamond, and soon reached a meadow plain. The goblin rolled alongside the boat like a bundle of weeds, but Richard rode in triumph through the low grassy country upon the back of his watery steed. It went straight as an arrow, and, strange to tell, was heaped up on the ground like a ridge of water or a wave, only rushing on endways. It needed no channel, and turned aside for no opposition. It flowed over everything that crossed its path like a great serpent of water, with folds fitting up all the ups and downs of the way. If a wall came in its course, it flowed against it, heaping itself on itself until it reached the top, whence it plunged to the foot on the other side and flowed on. Soon he found that it was running gently up a grassy hill. The waves kept curling back as if the wind blew them, or as if they could hardly keep from running down again. But still the stream mounted and flowed, and the waves with it. It found it difficult, but it could do it. When they reached the top, it bore them across a healthy country, rolling over purple heather and blue harebells and delicate ferns and tall foxgloves, crowded with bell purple and white. All the time, the palm leaf curled its edges away from the water and made a delightful boat for Richard, while Toadstool tumbled along in the stream like a porpoise. At length, the water began to run very fast and went faster and faster till suddenly it plunged them into the deep lake with a great splash and stopped there. Toadstool went out of sight and came up gasping and grinning, while Richard's boat tossed and heaved like a vessel in a storm at sea. But not a drop of water came in. Then the goblin began to swim, and pushed and tugged the boat along, but the lake was so still, and the motion so pleasant, that Richard fell asleep. So I like how MacDonald does this, how we have an introduction of the fairy court is the first chapter. Second chapter is an introduction to the first child who will be stolen, which is this girl named Alice, who her friends all think is strange. And then the third chapter we have Richard, and so the third chapter, an introduction to the boy who's going to be stolen. And so I like how he does this how MacDonald does this in parts. We have an introduction to these different places, and with each place, different purposes and intentions and things happening. And like Alice, Richard is similarly out of place, and it's really fun because the narrator even makes a point of saying, if the two had met, which would be impossible since they are so different, Alice would really not like him. And they are so very different from each other, but at the same time, they both have been chosen to be taken to the fairy courts, and so I guess they're not so different. So it's a fun way MacDonald does this. How he pulls you know, three spaces together: the fairy court, the world of Alice, and the world of Richard, and how these things are going to come together for cross purposes. Ooh, perhaps. Anyways, I could keep talking, but I'm just excited about the next part of the story. And the next part is actually quite a bit longer. It's one chapter in itself, but it's as long as the first two parts have been. So I am excited about getting to that. So I'm going to stop talking right now. So I'm going to stop talking right now and just get on to the reading of the last part of Cross Purposes. So if you're interested in that, check out the next video. Cheers, guys.